So I'm going to talk about the web platform as a whole, because web platform is evolving and is evolving a lot, and in the near future we might do things on the web that we might thought that was not possible. First of all, I will talk a little bit about who regulates or who says what is the web platform, okay? So first of all, we have W3C, which stands for World Wide Web Committee, and this organization is specifically for holding standards of the web. So these guys have a specification of every standard that every browser vendor will use. Okay, so when a browser tries to implement a specification, they will go to W3C. They will get constraints of the implementation that they have to do, and this is kind of the source of truth. But we got another one, a little bit younger, which is WhatWG. And this organization was formed in 2004, mainly because W3C, the other organization, wanted to take the web to a place where no one wants it to go. Yeah, so they created an organization and a kind of way where everyone can contribute with their opinion to everything that is in the browser. Okay, so if you want to give an opinion about Fetch API, other kind of APIs, you can actually go to their GitHub, and I'm going to show you this right now. So they mainly work here, and they have a few repositories where they group some of the specs, and you can actually go inside of one spec, in this case Fetch. Who here doesn't know Fetch? One guy. Okay, that's good. Two guys. I saw. Okay, three. So they have all the documentation and spec here, and the way you can contribute to this is you go to the issues on GitHub, and you can find here some kind of first issues. So someone didn't like a little bit of the specification, and they created an issue. So with that, you can go to the issue, open the issue. The issue you have to write your argument about what you want to change and why, and what will happen to the whole specification. And on this committee, all browser vendors are here. So Microsoft with Edge, Apple with Safari, Google with Chrome, they are all here, and they all hear you, and they at some point of your issue, they will attribute someone to implement what you want the web to have. Okay, so after that, you actually the W3C committee will look at it and will approve it or not. It depends on the community, on the comments on the issue. If someone doesn't like, or someone presents a valid argument not to be implemented, it will not be implemented on all browsers. But as soon as it gets to the W3C, it will get implemented by all browsers. Probably will take a lot of time because browsers, but yeah. Yeah.
Because browsers.
Yeah. Getting back to this, so you can actually see the specs without the GitHub repo, but you don't get the issues and the comments and all that stuff. And it's really interesting. And if you want to really see the last news about specifications, you can go to their Twitter, and they always post something about something new and something changing. So it's also a good resource to keep update on this. You know, until maybe 2010, 2011, there were that many APIs. There were HTML, you could do that stuff. There were XML HTTP requests, which is AJAX of the old times. Yeah, kind of that. But right now we have a bunch of other things that are really, really interesting. So one of them is WebAssembly. WebAssembly, the next guy giving a talk will talk about it, so I will not talk about it, okay? But you know, you get payment requests and handler API, so your website can actually, it doesn't need a third-party service to have a payment on your website. You can use the browser APIs. Keep in mind, most of these APIs are not yet implemented. They are specified, and they are some of them are still in discussion. So yeah, don't take it by it's there. Okay. Audio Worklet. I will not talk about this one because I don't really understand nothing about music, but it's okay. So you can get really deep on music, like synthesizers and things like that. You get all of that from a browser. WebAuth. I actually have a demo here that I want to show because it's really cool, and it's something really special. So this is a WebAuth, and what this gives you is ways of authenticating without password or users, using hardware from your device. Okay, so you can actually go here. You can see here that he asked me for a USB key or a built-in sensor. In this case, will be my fingerprint sensor. I will choose that one. I will pass to my fingerprint sensor. I registered my fingerprint sensor, and I can now authenticate with it. So imagine that you are on an iPhone or on an Android phone with fingerprint authentication. You can discard altogether the normal authentication by password and user. This is one example. I will not talk that much about this one too, because I got better ones, you know. So dynamic imports, this is for the hardcore JavaScript guys. So you can actually make an import in the middle of your page, in the middle of the runtime. At the runtime you can import something, and not only when the browser loads. Generic sensor API, this is for accelerometers, gyroscopes, and all kinds of sensors that a mobile phone or a computer could have. You can have access to that. Okay, this is really cool because you can catch the acceleration that your mobile phone is going or something like that. Web USB API, so you can interact with Arduinos and other kind of stuff hardware related. Web components and CSS Houdini. I'm gonna talk a lot about web components and CSS Houdini. And something is missing here. I don't know if anyone has noticed it, but in the last Undefined JS edition, someone talked about web Bluetooth. Yeah, so yeah, that should be here, but it's not on purpose, okay? I'm looking at you. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about web components right now. Web components is a few standards that work together, okay? So right now you have a lot of JavaScript frameworks like React, Angular, Vue.js, and all of those stuff, and the platform is kind of catching up with those, okay? Web components, it's a really cool way to get there. So we have here the custom elements, Shadow DOM, ES modules, and HTML templates. I'm gonna explain this in the next slide. So, you know, in web components is the capability of you creating your own HTML tag, as you see here, down here, okay? So you can create your components for using on the web. That's really cool because you don't need that abstraction on JS frameworks. So let's see where this takes us in the future, but it's a really interesting thing. And basically, this is a spec. So template is a specification, and it's basically a template where you can use it everywhere on your website. It's not displayed, okay? So a template is never displayed, or you can actually put him inside of something. And I have here this template content clone node. I will explain later why. But after you have a template, which is the structure of your web component, you have a JavaScript class that extends to HTML element. This was not possible before. So HTML element is the base of every element on your DOM API. Okay, so everything, an input and button or whatever, it will extend to HTML element. This is the really basic stuff. And shadow root. Okay, shadow root is a little bit more complex. Shadow root, it's like your DOM is a tree, right, of elements. It's always a tree. And what shadow root does is creating a subtree and encapsulates all the JavaScript and CSS and all the logic inside there. So there is no bleeding out. If you write a class here on your style, he will be contained on this component, okay, on this component, yeah. So it will not bleed out to the whole page, and you can have repeated classes in CSS and all that kind of stuff. It will not bleed out. This is really, really cool. The only way of passing some CSS values to here is using CSS properties that I will explain later. Okay, and this is the way that you actually connect your tag that is down here to your class. So you just define a custom element, you put the tag and the class, and the browser will get things together, and this will work flawlessly. Also, you can see that I have my dash title. Web components cannot have a single name. Okay, they always have to be a prefix on the word, because it's the way you can actually differentiate from the ones that come with the browser and yours. Okay. So basically, they have two life cycles, which for the framework guys, this should be awesome because you have a lot of them. But connected callback is actually when the component enters in the DOM, and disconnected callback is when the component is dismounted from the DOM. There are only these two, and the constructor of the class that you can see here. So this can be kind of considered like a life cycle, but yeah, it's discussable. And the only thing missing for this to work is how attributes work. So down here, once I have value and I have max, and these are attributes of my component. How can I do stuff with them? So you can actually declare a static property that will return the arguments that you want to listen to in the whole life of the component. And every time an attribute changes, he will call this callback with the name of the attribute, the old value, and the new value, and you do your stuff wherever you want. And this is mostly web components, so you don't have that much to show, because it's really a simple API that you can go from here to whatever you want. There are a few things using this. Okay, so hybrids, lit, element, polymer. Who here knows polymer? Okay, quite a few. Cool. Slim, stencil. Because polymer and stencil are the ones that got most attention from the community. These guys are from Ionic, and they are really good. And then you got Bavadin, which is also a group that make web components. If you want to actually see what you have out there to use as web components, you can go to this website, which is an official kind of centralization of all components, and you can find all kinds of stuff here. You can make your own and publish them here, so people can try them out. Yeah, so it's really interesting. Getting back to my presentation. Okay, so this brings one more thing. So web components nowadays are mostly compatible with all JS frameworks, except React, that has some drawbacks here and there, but it kind of work. So yeah, I was hoping for that. No. But you can actually think of this as really useful thing. So if you have a lot of, if you are working on a big company or on a big project, and you actually have multiple teams distributed by many places, you can actually make your UI as web components, and wherever is implementing some application that should have that UI and UX, you can actually give them those web components, and they will use React or Angular or Vue.js and whatever.
So
your
main button, minor button,
yeah,
form,
yeah, all that kind of stuff. So you can reuse with a lot of teams and a lot of other technologies,
so
and it will still work.
Custom HTML tags with whatever framework.
Just React have some drawbacks, but you can get around them and get it to work. Yeah. So all of them right now are working with them, and these web components shipped on all browsers, I think maybe a month or two ago. So it's on all browsers right now, which is really cool.
YouTube already uses them, right?
Yeah, YouTube is using them. Yeah. All the YouTube is done in actually Polymer. I'm actually going to explain a little bit about Polymer, because Polymer is just something on top of web components. Okay. Polymer does data binding and other kind of cool stuff that web components don't need to have, but developers need to have. So yeah, and this you can go here to custom elements everywhere and check the compatibility with other frameworks that are working on web, and the only one that is missing is React. Okay, so next one, I want to talk about CSS Houdini. And this is actually a bunch of specs that work together, also like web components. But CSS Houdini is in early stages, even though it exists like since 3 years ago. It's still on discussion, and it probably will change in the future. Okay. And I will explain every one of these. So the first one, and this one is kind of final, so we can use it on browsers today. It's custom properties, where you define kind of variables in CSS, and then you can use them wherever you like. And this doesn't need any kind of compilation, any kind of nothing. And the really cool thing is, if you are on an inspector and you kind of see this variable defined somewhere, you can change his value, and it will update the whole website, or all the CSS where this variable is. This is the only way to pass CSS things inside of web components. Okay, if you wanted to receive like primary and secondary colors on a web component, as the web component is scoped, it cannot see CSS from outside or cannot receive CSS from outside. This is the only way you can do it. Okay, but this is.
How do you pass variables from the outside?
You define them you define them on the outside of the component in your main document.
Visible. They're visible inside.
Yeah. They will cascade down to the web components that you are doing.
Variables, nothing else, right?
Yeah, only variables.
Okay.
Something typed OM. So this is a really cool feature for me, I think. Right now you can actually get a div and style the div, and as it is here. So this is in the style document, but it doesn't matter. If you put here div.style.opacity, you can give it an integer, a number, a string. He will accept everything. The new specification says that you actually have a way to create this kind of stuff, and they have a value and a unit. Why this is useful, or why should we do this? For us developers, it's not that big of a deal, but for browsers it is, because browsers can actually get faster at processing CSS and doing CSS stuff, because they don't have to check if it's a string, if it's a pixel unity, or if it's a RAM unity, or all that kind of stuff. So this will get your browser really a little bit faster. Not really fast, but a little bit faster.
So we're getting like CSS.RAM as well?
Yeah. All that kind of stuff. And even for display, where you have a block or none or whatever, you can actually use a yeah, it's all typed. Basically, they give types to the CSS, which is really cool, because you can actually now grab this value here and put ++, and the pixel will increment without you to have to put a string of with px on the side, you know.
String interpolation.
Yeah.
And the CSS engine has to parse the string.
Exactly.
That's what it does.
Yeah, and
That's
doing
not
that
very good.
thing again and again.
Usually pretty cool with TypeScript and such stuff
That's
because they can type what they are expecting to receive in each, like
Exactly.
methods, for example.
Exactly. So this is it's not a big of a feature for us, but for the browser it really is. So the layout API, this is the most incomplete API, and what this does is a really cool thing. So imagine when Flexbox was getting out, was being released as a spec of the browsers. You know, Chrome supports it, Firefox doesn't support it, Edge, I will not talk about it, and so on. This is a way of you expressing the layout that you want. If you want to have Flexbox at that time and on every browser, and if you had CSS Houdini, you could actually make your layout and ship the layout to every browser, and the implementation would be equal to every browser, and you don't need to wait for a specification to come out in case of CSS Grid or Flexbox, which is the most common use. So this code is not complete, okay, so a lot of things missing here, but this is really complex, and I will not talk that much about it. I encourage you to go to the GitHub and see actually the spec and see the comments on the issues, because this is really interesting the way they are implementing this. And we got the Paint API, which is kind of more or less the same thing, but for painting whatever you want on a web page. So this is a really simple example where I create a class that has a paint method. It receives some variables. In this case, context is important because context is what you are painting, and you can actually put your variables there and all kind of stuff. But one thing that you can put here is Bezier curves and all kind of stuff. So you can make a really complex shape that otherwise would only be possible with SVGs. Okay. And this has a equal implementation on all browsers because you are implementing it, so it's kind of the best of both worlds. And this is the usage, so you just register your paint, and you can go here in CSS and say paint and put the same name that you give it, and it will print, in this case, this rectangle here.
The output is all CSS, or is like canvas stuff or something like that? The output is
underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. It really gives you access to the painting API. So the same code that they use, you are using that code. Yeah. Okay. So this is the animation worklets. This is also a really cool stuff. Okay. So it's showing. This animation worklets has a lot of potential of you getting a lot of animations together on a website and chaining them and doing that kind of stuff. So in this case, I'm actually defining a keyframe effect, which the element E is this box here, and this element is this scrolling part, okay, that you see here. Okay. And what is doing is actually syncing up the amount of scroll that you have with the progress of your animation. So as you go and scroll, the browser automatically calculates the percentage of your animation in that point, and you will animate with the scroll. Yeah, this is.
That's fluid.
Yeah, it's very fluid, and this is really complicated doing this without this kind of stuff.
Yeah. At least with this kind of fluidity.
Yeah. You can actually see that's running on your website. So if you wanted to explore more about Houdini and some more examples on all that kind of stuff, you have a really cool website here. where you can explore some implementations. Not all of the specs are here, so not all of the specs have examples. But one really cool that I like is this ripple animation, and they made an animation just for this, but it's really smooth. And the way that we would use it, it's just saying paint the ripple, and you can actually, in this example here, you can see that he will send some variables. So if I want to change the background of the ripple and all that kind of stuff, you can actually build your animation worklet in a way where you can actually send some variables inside, and the animation will change with that. There are more websites. I will put this presentation in the end, but yeah. So for today, that's it. There are a lot of more specifications that you can actually go and experiment and see. But the main point that I want you to get is, like, web platform is becoming our computer and mobile. You know, in the future you might not need to make a native application for every kind of platform, because browsers are abstracting all of the things, sensors, cameras, all of that kind that you need to have in native devices. You can actually do it with the new APIs that are coming out. So I hope by 2025 I might be only doing web.
Yeah.
I hope so. Who does like this idea?
Only to
I
work
don't.
on
I hate
only to
JavaScript.
work only to work in a browser?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. So you don't do native applications because you get to a point where you don't need it.
Yeah,
that
their
makes
operating system.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Only if I can just ditch JavaScript
Yeah,
and program it.
exactly. Sorry?
You need to have like the latest browser to run it, so yeah.
We'll get there. By 2025, probably not, but a few more years. I don't know. Because, yeah.
UI applications, browser.
Yeah. And you can actually, today, it's kind of happening. So on Android, you can actually add your progressive web app to your home screen and have a shortcut.
On iPhone as well.
Yeah, on iPhone I think too. And it will behave like a native application. So in the future, I hope I will not do mobile anymore. So Java and Kotlin and all that stuff. Swift. But yeah, that's it. Okay, I hope you liked it.
All right. Any questions?
Yeah, do you have any questions?
I just did my question.
What do I need to do in React to get?
Yeah, I was gonna say what the React.
You can use React
Man,
inside the
they
web.
don't support React.
No. React doesn't support.
Yes, they support
No,
React.
React was
doesn't
here before.
No. That's
So I mean, those guys are just like.
so you can actually track here.
I'm just kidding.
But no, but
Like,
the new
in
version.
terms of code or configuration, what kind of stuff?
No, it's the way you pass attributes to the component. So you have to make a little wrapper around your web component in React, because by default they will not pass the attributes down. Yeah, you have the props on React, and that kind of doesn't go right with web components. Yeah, but it will change on Fiverr. So the new Fiverr implementation, it will rip this off, and it will work just fine. Yeah.
If you really want to use React with web component, you just create a web component and
I mean,
put
I don't-
all React.
I just use React. And,
Or
you know.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
No, but it's an interesting thing to be able to use the same web components for all of your projects, whether it's React or Angular or Vue or.
Yeah.
That's it. That's a
Yeah.
CSS
That's
library.
pretty, kind of
Standardized.
base.
You know, you can do a design
It's kind of
pattern,
like
and then you
style
implement it on
components for
web components.
But actually good, you know, but actually good stuff instead
Yeah.
of the weird stuff that's.
I think it's really cool because it's really simple. It's not complicated, and you can actually evolve from there to whatever you want. So yeah.
Nice.
Okay. So there are no more questions. Yep. Tume, you are next.
All right, nice. Thank you very much.